strong.
Howdy everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to JimKiDo. So I wanted to go through a quick review over some of the stuff that I've been doing over the past month. So this particular scenario is actually what's known as the never surrender scenario. So I'm working from the Xbox One in this case. And just to give you an idea, so the never surrender scenario is supposed to be where you go off, you build up some resources, build a ship, go off to some base, and then go upgrade, repair, upgrade, and defend that base from a series of waves of drones. So I had tried this once before. So if you go out to new, there's the never surrender scenario. And then this will give you an option to start off from your regular other location, space, moon, Earth, Mars, etc. And I've tried it before, and part of this was trying to go after a series of achievements in Xbox. So the main ones I'm trying to go after are these down here. So IC did drones, bring it on. I'm doing my part, and scrap delivery. The wave scenario of games is not really new. That's all fine too. What I wasn't expecting was the time frame in which the waves would show up and the damage that they would do in the course of each wave. So I figured what I'll do is I'll make a big honking ship, get something with lots of guns, and we'll go park this thing in front of the base while I go fix it, upgrade it. Then this can be taking that punishment, and this is what I came up with. So this is the EXO Hammerhead. It's a really cool looking ship. I like the layout. Overall, it's pretty, as large as it is, it's not filled with a bunch of frilly stuff. And that's perfect because, let's be honest, Space Engineers on Xbox really doesn't do frilly well. It needs to be just what it needs, nothing more, and that'll get the job done. Because that'll keep the lag down to a minimum, all that. Well, I think I've gotten, what I've chosen here from this is, it's the largest ship I think I can build without seeing too much performance downturn. It is, as you notice, see here, it's not all that laggy at all. But here's the thing. This is being presented by a projector, and when I noticed early on that it had a merge block at the back, I went ahead and set this up so that it could set up that merge block so that while I'm going through and dealing with the batteries, oh my gosh, there's a lot of batteries on this thing. they could be charging, and that's great because there are a lot of them. Slews of batteries. It goes on and on and on. That's 3 layers deep there. So what I want to do in this video is kind of go over this particular piece. I've been building on this for about 3 weeks or so, and this is how far I've gotten. I drastically underestimated the amount of time it was going to take to try and build this monster. There's some other aspects to it that I will need to address, and I'll definitely go over those in this video. Well, maybe not this particular one. We'll get into it on this particular build, but I think what I'd like to do is set up a series of videos that covers this particular model. It'll definitely be applicable to other similar ships of this size, and especially if you're talking about something that's you're dealing with on the Xbox. So the Xbox, this is the Xbox One X, and so it's a little bit more performative than it would be on the Xbox One S, and that's fine for me, obviously, but I wanted to kind of give people an idea. Part of the point of this particular channel is that not all of us have a PC that's game grade material. I do computer work. I'm a software developer by day, and that means that what work I do on a PC is specifically for work, not really a whole bunch of gaming time available to me. But what I do want is an opportunity to kind of go through games like this, where they started off on the PC, and very strong on the PC, I'll have to say, and they've tried to make the transition to allow for it to work on something like the Xbox One. The Xbox One is a really serious piece of technology, and that's a compliment for sure. There's still some limitations, and part of what comes into this is games like this that started on a PC, that got optimized for the PC as they continued to go through development, didn't have to deal with a lot of compromises. Compromises between one video card over another isn't really what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is overall performance of CPU and obviously the relevant aspects between the CPU and the GPU, your graphics processor. So with the Xbox One, and I'm sure with the PlayStation, those challenges for developers is finding that way to make compromises performative. And that's no mean feat, trust me. So the real goal of this channel has been to kind of spotlight how this can still be a very fun game on a console. And if you don't have $1,000 to go and throw at a PC that's going to do what you need it to mess with games like these, and I find these games super relaxing. I enjoy them a lot. All that being said, my time is still very limited, so being able to get on a console real quick, throw an hour or so at something like this makes total sense. I dig it. I enjoy the genre. I enjoy constructor or exploration type games like these, and that makes all the difference in the world for me. But if it were, say, if my job wasn't in computers, then maybe digging into a computer and doing this kind of stuff, these kinds of games on computers would make more sense. So with all that having been said, I think what I'd like to do is kind of go through, time to go to the bathroom. In survival, you end up having to come back over and do this all the time. So I kind of look at it as, well, you need a bio break. So there's the water closet. Now, what I'd like to touch on first is kind of some of what I've had to do to get prepared to make a build like this. So obviously, with a PC system, I could utilize a number of scripts that could help me manage all the different components and pieces and resources and whatnot that I needed to build this ship. Now let's take a look at what the condition of the ship is now, and considering I've spent 3 weeks trying to build this, vastly underestimating how much time it was going to take. So let me go and remote into the base, and let me go jump out to the projector, and here we are. So I am 7,720 out of 8,420 blocks, or I want to call them blocks, because build progress, it doesn't really make a lot of sense. Build progress is anywhere between, usually represented as a percentage, and that's 0 to 100%. So we're really close to being done here. So we've got 643 armor blocks. We've got 14 blast door corners and 11 edges. We've got a welder that we've missed somewhere. There's an interior pillar. There's 8 interior pillars. I think those are actually on the outside, not inside. I've got 1 more landing gear to build. There's an antenna, a couple of wheels, an oxygen farm, a rotor part, handful of corner lights, doubles, interior lights, interior turrets that I've missed, a sensor I've missed, straight railings, and transparent LCDs. Okay, cool. So actually, I think I know where those straight railings are. Let's double check, see what I've got. Let's see. Yeah, I've got enough to take care of those. So I think they're right here. Yeah, okay, so here's one I missed. Oh, I'm missing steel tube? Really? Yeah, I'm missing steel tube. Okay, we're lagging a little bit here. Okay. There's another one, I think, around here somewhere that I missed. Ah, there it is. So those are the 3. And that gives you an idea of some of the complexities to this, that as much as I've tried to automate, okay, so there's one of the turrets that I missed. As much as I've tried to automate as much of the build process to this, there's still aspects of the build process that makes it difficult to generate from a blueprint. So before I get into what I've done to try and prepare for that, let's take a look at the blueprint itself. B. Okay, so I looked at a number of these large ships in creative mode to see which ones would be better suited. I looked at this one. I don't even know if I could realistically build it in creative, because that's 22,000 blocks. 22,600, almost 700 blocks. Okay, so that's huge. That's massive. Here's another one, 7,900, a little bit smaller from a block size than this particular ship. And the guy who did this actually did a lot of work to try and get it to be worthwhile on Xbox, and that's awesome. And you know, putting in the extra details, that's awesome. So here, features for the flock. Oh, let's see. So he should actually probably redo this because now the frostbite blocks are available. So that's cool. Um, and again, he used timer blocks where he could, but scripts aren't available, so that makes for a different experience. Let's see. I haven't played with this one yet, and it's a little bit. It's also a good bit larger than the one I currently hit on. So I may do another one of these runs where I end up building this one, and we'll take a look at what those challenges would look like. Let's see. So let's see. Any others? Yeah. Okay. Where's? So I looked at this one in creative, and it's an interesting design. I actually like the design a lot. Unfortunately, again, we're talking about a significant number of blocks more than this, is over twice the amount of blocks this particular build has, and that makes for a challenge on Xbox for sure. This one's a little smaller. It's a heavy frigate, so that's cool, and Escort definitely puts it in the range of what I'm trying to do with this particular mission. So this is another one where I may end up going back and giving it a try. I chose the moon specifically because I didn't want to have to worry about whether the ship I built could deal with atmospherics or not, because of the different versions of this scenario that I've seen. The base is always in space. Let's see. There's Big Red Ultimate. Really isn't the kind of ship. It's an interesting ship for sure, but for as large as it is, it's not exactly doing what I would need it to. This one is interesting and definitely one I want to give it a try sometime later. This is the LCC-9, but this is a military configured freighter as opposed to the regular LCC-9. Or is it LCC-3 actually is I think what it's called, that you can buy. And that's what I actually tried originally to do, was instead of building a ship like this from scratch, I tried to buy a fairly large ship and retrofit it and get it so that it could handle the onslaught. They worked for a bit, and they definitely helped from carrying resources out to the relative space, and that makes sense. But it still didn't end up doing what I wanted it to do. Let's see, how are we doing on power and stuff? All right, let's go hit the restroom real quick. So this particular ship, RBB. All right, so this particular ship, again, there's no mods, there's no scripts involved, and so it's dealing with the first two decorative DLCs, which honestly, I think when you get the Xbox version, you get the first two decorative DLCs automatically. I do have the Frostbite on here. I don't have the Sparks of the Future DLC downloaded yet, just because I was in the middle of this when that came out. So not really relevant to what I'm trying to do. So 8,500 blocks, 3 different grids. Now that's another thing that's interesting about Xbox, is when you bring these over, now I can't speak to what this looks like when you do it on PC, but when you bring it over specifically in survival mode, and you present it through the projector, it will only do whatever the largest grid is, if I understand it correctly. So there's more than one grid on this thing, and really it allowed for, I understand why it's saying it's 3. So there's a turret at the bow of the ship that is a custom turret. And that's in creative, it does come out, and I can see what it looks like. And it's basically a big, huge missile turret. And that's fine, but really for this particular mission, I need that front turret to be more a series of Gatling guns instead of missiles. That's fine. And the fact that it didn't come out, so when I brought it in on survival, it only chose the biggest grid, and so that's the main ship. So I'll have to go through and retrofit in the other turret, and we'll take a look at that as well in the course of this series of videos. But here's the overall piece involved. Good number of Gatling turrets, rocket turrets, interior turrets for side protection. There's no turrets inside the ship, and that's fine. I'm not worried about borders. These are going to end up being drones that are coming after me. So, all right. So there's the custom turret with 2 rocket launchers. Well, I obviously have to redo that. So 2 refineries, 7 O2H2 generators, 2 assemblers, 16 oxygen farms, 16 oxygen tanks, 7 hydrogen tanks, and 1 small. I don't know where the small hydrogen tank. Oh, I know where that was. That was. There's an area in this ship that I wish was accessible, so that if things became damaged, fixing them wouldn't be that big of a deal. But there is a whole aspect of the ship that I can't get to because it's all encased in armor. 8 jump drives, that's a little excessive. I won't really need those, but they will work as intermittent armor based on where they're located that ends up protecting the reactor room. So 5 cryo chambers. So a crew of 5 is expected on this ship. I'm going to be doing this solo, so those are overkill, and that's fine. Medical room, gravity generator, remote control, which was odd because, oh, I know why. The remote control would have been on one of the other grids, so that never came out. 3 large reactors and 8 solar panels. Solar panels are, they're a wash, I think, relative to the power needs of this ship. And there's overall layout. So there really is only 2 pressurized areas, and only one of them makes any sense. So the bridge being the pressurized area, that makes sense. But this has also a slew of welding tools built in, so things getting fixed without me having to be directly involved is a plus, obviously. Now, where do we end up starting? Okay, so we'll start off with the pressurized area. So this hangar is intended to be pressurized, which is fine, I guess, because there's this nice little living area, and that's fine. But honestly, from a practical aspect, having this pressurized is just a waste of oxygen from my perspective. The only area that really makes any difference from a pressurized standpoint would be the bridge. Bridge is almost done. We're getting there. But there's this nice blast door scenario here to protect the inside. It blocks all the screens, but then again, when I'm flying this thing, it's normally I'm flying it in this mode anyway, so that's fine. So here's the ship. I think what I want, actually before I get too far involved into the ship itself, let me kind of get into, well, that was strange. I don't remember closing that. That might be a bug. That's fine. Okay, we'll get into it sometime later. All right, so you can see where a number of the armor blocks have not been completed. In some cases, it goes all the way through, and so there's a bit of work to be done. Some of that work, though, so there's some of the welders, and they're strategically placed, so this will fix most of the engines. Well, it fixed those two engines for sure, and the corresponding conveyors up there, as well as these. So these are those that would end up being fixed. These in here have their own, and these in here have their own, and that is also set up to fix the assembler. I don't have any motors. Okay, so I can't get that fixed right now. But like I said, let me get started first from the standpoint of what I had to prep from a resources standpoint. And we'll take this guy out to kind of show you. So let's, I don't know why it keeps on telling me that, because I've got plenty of fuel. And I got plenty of uranium, so I'm fine. I like the combination of hydrogen and ion thrusters, especially on the moon. Makes it really easy to switch out. So let's see. Why? Oh, I see. Why didn't that show up? Interesting. All right. So right now, oh, I know it. I know why. Because when I have them set up like this, I can shut off the hydrogen and just utilize ion. So what I had was, and I've started kind of downturning some of this. So I used to have a gold and silver mine located here. Here's all that's left of that rig. Alright. And then over here, I had a nickel and platinum. I was really only interested in the platinum. And it wasn't a very healthy platinum mine, I'll be honest. And then I had a separate one over here. Which actually was a much better gold source as well as ice. Now it's still in play and still functional. And it's got just enough power to keep it going. I have it set up so that it can adjust the positioning of the solar panels, and I can activate that remotely. Let's see which one's which. Okay, so there's that one. So and I can just help it along and maintaining its power, but honestly, it's had enough power, so much power now, it really doesn't ever drop down to something that I need to worry about. Here, let me go land real quick. I have these lights down below strategically positioned so that I know I don't have to guess too far. There. I'll just lock that in, shut those guys down. Now I'm gonna go take a look down here. So, because of my location, ice and gold were obviously fairly important to grab and gain access to quickly. So I've used this as my initial effort to gather up as much gold and ice as I could. So I can go and so that's how I've managed through on that, and this is all remotely accessible as well. And then everything else comes up through here. Not too bad. And obviously all right. There. All right. So I'll go ahead and bring that on over. And I'll bring that over. And I'll bring that over. And that's fine. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started back up again. Save just a little bit of hydrogen. No need to be all Ferrari about this. Go. Now those lights really help preventing me from having to eyeball it every time or readjust my view every time I try and go and land. And that's another thing I had to learn. So if you're going to use hydrogen, getting hydrogen back out of your base once they've converted it from ice to hydrogen gas, you got to go and turn on the stockpile of your local of your onboard tank just to make that work. It was an odd thing to learn. All right, so that's all fine. And obviously resources already taken off. Okay, so just a quick review of what I've got on the base here. So I started off with these guys, 2 separate drill points, configured a little bit differently. So this one, got to thank kind of Joshi for his work on some of his videos showing how to kind of upscale your drilling. Now, I still have to manage all of this by hand. I could utilize a timer and automatically go through, but I didn't need to specifically overload my factory, and since I don't have the scripts to manage where resources get put and things like that, I've been a little bit more strategic on how I end up doing some of the drilling, like in this particular case. Now, I've since needed to build a digger. This digger is really, really effective. Can't hold a lot, but it is very, very effective. One thing I ended up having to do, though, was I had to make some modifications to make it a little bit more performant. So I have these set up and added to. Originally it was just these downward thrusters, but it was really having a hard time staying off the ground when it was flying. So I had to just add a few more thrusters to get it the kind of torque off the ground that I needed. But that's a super, super cool design. I really liked it. That's the Workhorse 4. But I've made some slight adjustments to it, so I'll probably have to upload that change so I can go and benefit from that again later. So that was based on that design. Really, really good. May end up actually taking it with me for the trip to the space base. Let's see, where is the space base? Space base is over there. Okay. So that's the eventual destination. And only challenge with this one is it only has connectors, a connector in the back. So I'm going to need to either figure out a different way to get it connected, or I'm going to have to make another modification in this hangar bay to make that a more worthwhile setup. Probably maybe set up a large container here and then set up a connector off that to make that work right. Because what I could do is, instead of have all of these drilling heads, I could maybe portion off the bottom for grinding and then maybe the middle for welding, and just make it an all-rounder. We'll see how that works. Alright, so that's the base and the surrounding remote mining rigs that have helped. I tried to mess around with the grinding pit, but honestly I think this was, for my part, something of a waste of time. I still don't have the nuances down of what this kind of contraption needs, and it really hasn't been that big of a help. Now what I will need to do before too long is I need to extend out a connector out to right about here so that I can get the hydrogen offloaded and make it a little bit easier to move components back and forth between the base and the ship. So that'll come along here shortly as well. I'll do that on a separate video. What else we got going on here? So a number of aspects here that I still need to build on. But the overall state of the ship is looking really, really good. Now, like I said, I'll start off a separate video that's going to go into some of the challenges that I've had with building this. My apologies for the weird edit here, guys. I happened to lose my microphone towards the end of this video. Regardless, I wanted to cover just some of the final details about this ship on this episode before we closed out. Like I mentioned before, and you can easily see here, there's still plenty of work to do. As we saw in the projector summary, most of the remaining components to be installed are armor blocks. A good bit of those are on the outside, but as you can see, there's plenty of them still on the inside, and I'll have to do those by hand. Now, down here in the reactor room, we've got a good bit of power output with these massive reactors. The attached welders should ensure that they stay operational, but in the case of the never surrender scenario, the jump drives you see up above should act as additional armor, since once we get to the space base, they really won't be of further use, and they're not critical to the operation of the ship. There's probably some critique to be had on the use of reactors this size, as it's obvious that they're really mostly needed to charge the jump drives and maintain the battery banks. While there are a few ion thrusters aboard, most of the ship's thrust is actually powered by hydrogen. But this critique comes from the scenario perspective in question, not one of general design. Again, I wanted to get into those details in a later video as a means of feedback to the designer. Speaking of which, a big shout out goes to Benny Stingray for posting this to the mod.io site. I'll put a link to this ship and their profile in the description below. As we can see, the designer liberally applied turrets throughout the ship. We have good sector coverage on the backside. And there's a number of crossing fields of fire for both missile and Gatling guns. One of the final pieces of major manufacture on this build will be the custom turret here at the bow of the ship. On the PC version, I understand that some players rely on scripts to control turrets like these, but that's not an option yet on the console. Instead, we'll need to make use of gyroscopes and a remote control to use the turret, and then hope it doesn't make the game too laggy to be useful. Armor will also be a challenge for the turret, so I expect that to be an interesting effort on its own. Okay, so here's the missing sensor we saw listed in the projector summary, so I'll have to take care of that. So I hope you found this video useful, interesting, or otherwise worthwhile. If you did, hit the like button and share. As there will be more videos in this series, feel free to subscribe and click the bell icon to get notified of new episodes. Regardless, thanks for watching. I'm Jim of JimKiDo. Stay safe out there.